going? Welcome to Swim Podcast episode number 14. The someone who isn't me on this one is musician and artist Wes Borland, and in it we talk about his just released solo album, which is called Crystal Machete, which is kind of like a synth-driven post-rock soundtrack album. So if you're a fan of things like Zombie and John Carpenter's soundtracks, a bit of Giorgio Moroder, some John Zorn, maybe even a bit of Battles, then you should check it out. You'll really dig it. I think it's great. So we talk about that. We also talk a bit about Limp Bizkit and the situation with their album. We get into the whole thing about some of his onstage personas and the implications of the different ones, which is really cool. We talk about the writing and recording of the upcoming new Queen Kwong record. We talk a bit about his TV show that he was on recently with his fiance Carré from Queen Kwong, which is like a house renovation show. As always, the podcast is a labour of love, so if you could leave a nice review and a rating on iTunes, that would be awesome. Also, spread the word. I'd really appreciate it, and so would my cat. Listen. Genuine purrs. So this is Wes Borland. Enjoy.
You know, these recorders are really helpful.
Right?
I've got the Zoom. I don't know how it compares to the Olympus, but I'm sure is that an Olympus?
Yeah.
I don't know how they compare, but I end up using these on records all the time.
Yeah?
To record, like, sounds out in the field.
Yeah.
You know, and then bring them in, and sometimes I can't tell the quality difference between that and, like, a U87 or something. It's pretty amazing. And I've gotten some of the best just stereo drum recordings on those things that I've ever gotten before. I've just sat one of them in front of a drum kit.
And they squash it really hard, and
they sound really, like, as long as you're not peaking out your levels, you bring it in and like throw a compressor plug-in on it, and all of a sudden it's just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds like a mixed drum kit.
Amazing. Well, that's one of the things I wanted to speak to you about, is the fact that
was that a good way to get into it?
Yeah, I mean, we're off.
We're off.
We're into it. I'm into it. I think one of the things that I really respect about you is the fact that you've got this attitude of treating music like art, which is one of the things that I also find something that you obviously really struggle with other things because of that. But I find that, you know, like Crystal Machete that you've just put out, that just seemed to appear out of nowhere, and it's an amazing album.
Thanks.
It sounds like it's so cinematic. It sounds like it was made as a soundtrack.
That was kind of the idea when it started. I wanted to do. I mean, that's sort of my dream job, is to do soundtracks and to find a director to work with or someone to work with that, you know, would allow me to collaborate with them. I've done several soundtracks with other composers who hire me as like an additional musician to supplement what they're doing already.
Yeah.
But a lot of those have been for like shitty movies like Saw and Resident Evil and Underworld and you know, stuff like that you know, when I say shitty movies, it's not that I think they're unentertaining.
Yeah.
They're just
they're not what you're going for.
Well, and I'm happy to work on I mean, I worked on a Miley Cyrus movie before, and that was absolutely just awful, but it wasn't as bad as all kinds of other things. I bet that would be interesting
now, though.
Oh, to work on one now?
Yeah, with her. She seems.
This was before she got quote unquote cool. This was before her rebranding.
Do you think it's a rebranding? I just think she took loads and loads of drugs and started hanging out with Wayne Coyne.
That's a rebranding.
I guess so. I wouldn't have said it was necessarily a conscious one. It just seems that she seems to be. Anyway, whatever.
Well, she dropped a lot of weight and cut all her hair off and started doing drugs and
doing loads of psychedelics.
Started taking her clothes off.
Yeah.
That's a rebranding, man.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's like that's a conscious.
Yeah, that's how I'm planning to do my rebrand.
Yeah, that would look great for us guys.
Yeah.
To do that.
But yeah, so I think That's how it sounds to me with that record anyway. And I think that which then made me think of the Lotus Island record as well, because when you put that out,
that was sort of the transition into Crystal Machete. Was
Yeah.
Lotus Island. It was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna. No one really cares what I'm doing anymore. I'm kind of like I've never been much of a guitar player, and I'm sort of like a has-been as far as being like a rock artist. So I've kind of
I feel like you're selling yourself short on both of those, but carry on.
But I've kind of degenerated into this place where nobody gives a fuck about what I'm doing, so I might as well just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And and that's what makes me happy, is to do music like that. I'm not trying to I've got a blooming career in reality renovation television now, so go to hell, music.
Yeah.
I'll do whatever I want.
Yeah.
I've sold out in a whole nother area of entertainment.
I want to talk about that in a minute. But
right.
I think the thing with Lotus Island, I mean, we spoke about it a bunch when you did that record.
Yeah.
And and I actually sat and watched Holy Mountain with it playing. I thought it was an amazing piece of work. I can't even imagine how much effort had gone into it. But with this new album, did you write that? Did you just write it with scenes in mind, or were you just looking at it, just doing a straight album, or did you have visual references that you then wrote to that you don't want to tell anyone about?
There were no visual references at all. It was just it was like writing a soundtrack that I imagined a film to afterwards. Like, I knew I was going to have a main titles and end credits to like bookend everything. But from there, it was just playing around and not caring about too much, and just sort of being myself, so that like elements of, I'm sure there were elements that sounded like slightly like Limp Bizkit on it, like Limp Bizkit music, and I'm sure there are elements, the very lighter side of that with delayed guitars and stuff, and there were elements that were, the part of me that made Big Dumb Face like 15 years ago was present on it, because there were, some of the I just sort of let my mind go, and not like, if things got serious or things got a little funny or they got a little cheeky or corny or whatever happened on the record, it was fine, because it was all just it was just going to be whatever it was, and to whatever the film was. With that said, I had really strong parameters going into it, which were it's going to be a soundtrack to an 80s science fiction / horror movie.
Yeah.
I'm going to seek out all these 80s synthesizer sounds that were from very specific films, like Legend and Blade Runner, and the smattering of the John Carpenter movies. And like, I'm going to use all these specific synthesizers that they used on these movies, and these, there's actually a lot of Miami Vice soundtrack, like from the 80s.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah, like I actually love that, like that whole era of music. I mean, it's just, there's something about like riding that cheesy edge, and not going like dipping a little bit into corniness, but then bringing it back enough to where, just sort of like, something about that is just, I don't know.
No, I agree. I think
really
that was an amazing like genre of music. You've got bands like Zombie making a career out of, using those reference points and making it their own, and I think it's incredible. Like, to like actually do the research and like build a sonic palette out of those things is incredible. Like, and
then add in my own thing with it,
Yeah, like I just finished Stranger Things, and I know
Loved it. Yeah.
Right. Everyone's been going on about it, and like, you can't escape it at the moment. But one of the things straight away is that the intro music is incredible.
Yeah. and the way the titles look and the way everything looks. I mean, it's very E.T. and Goonies, like the combination of those two films. But man, did they nail it!
Perfect.
I mean, nailed it.
Yeah, and left it open as well, which is rad.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I find it interesting to go back and use those sort of things as reference points and to find sounds and use them and apply them in newer ways, because I don't think it is cheesy. I think there's an added value of nostalgia to those sort of sounds now as well.
Yeah, it makes me feel really comfortable. Yeah. Like when I hear sounds like that, and it reminds me of the films that I grew up on that were that just made me feel better. You know, like when I watched those movies, it was an escape from everything else that was going on. And I mean, going to, you know, elementary or primary school and high school is just just awful. You know,
best years of your life.
Yeah, it's just terrible and a terrible time. You know, I think almost everyone has just a really shitty time in school, but and time just goes by so slowly, and it just crawls by, and you're learning all these, you know, terrible things about life, like not everyone likes you. People are really shitty. Yeah. You know, you're sort of like learning how everything else is going to be, but a very severe version sort of how everything else is going to be. And, you know, where people are just ruthless. Not that they get any less ruthless, but...
No, they just try and disguise it better.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that those films really, you know, I'm sure people, you know, who are different ages than I am have different films that make them feel that way. But, you know, those films from the 80s just... It's like a little piece of me that had nothing bad affect it. Like there's nothing bad in that compartment in my soul or whatever.
Yeah. It's like a little refuge with those sounds.
Yeah, a little refuge with those sounds and those films. And for sure.
That's great.
And I think a lot of people feel that way. That's probably, I mean, I think that's why Star Wars is so successful, because it was an escape, you know, for so many people, and Star Wars is almost like sports at this point, where like you can find somebody that like, so many people like it that it's an easy way to immediately have a common interest. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's true. Huh.
And I have no interest in sports, so I find it hard to have you know, conversation with strangers right off the bat.
Yeah.
Or, you know, want to talk about the game.
Yeah.
The match.
Yeah, I struggle with that as well. But then I think that's why a lot of people end up in music, is because they're those people that never really went there with that sort of stuff. I mean, music has always been like that lifeline for people, hasn't it? Don't you think? It was for me anyway.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I mean, I'm sort of running out of that now because I'm kind of lost interest in the band thing. So I'm trying to... I'm sort of devolving into just being really introverted and kind of a pretentious prick.
Great.
Devolving into being a pretentious has-been prick that's not interested in what anyone's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that as well.
But I don't feel like a dick.
I don't think so at all.
Like, I don't know. I don't feel like a dick. have kind of become...
I don't think we'd be friends if you were a dick.
Well, you never know. Maybe you're a dick too.
Well, yeah, maybe we're just like both clueless dicks.
At least we're not pussies. At least we're not pussies.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, actually, like you saying about this, because I was thinking earlier when I was coming in, I remember my old band was on tour, and I think it was around 98, and we were playing at Nottingham Rock City, and you were playing upstairs. I think it was with Soulfly, maybe?
Yeah.
And I remember coming upstairs, we were playing in the downstairs room, and watching you lot sound check. And I remember you just... Yeah, I think you had like... It sounds really creepy, actually. Like, I've been watching you for all this time. I don't mean it like that. But I just remember thinking that I wanted to like go and say hello to you because I felt that we'd have a lot in common.
Yeah.
Because at that point I don't know.
Well, you should have. That was a miserable tour. We had a bus on that tour with no air conditioning or heat or anything.
Yeah.
It broke down all the time. At least we weren't in a van or a Sprinter or anything. I don't think they had Sprinters then, did they?
Yeah.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, of sorts anyway.
I wish we would have been somehow, like, we'd somehow had a crew of guys then. Like, everybody wanted to have a crew.
Yeah.
And it was a bunch of, like...
Because like, then it would be
people,
legitimate.
yeah, so it was our crew was a bunch of non-paid guys from home that were, like, friends with everybody who were just along for the ride and just taking up space. So we had this, like, a bus that was probably the same cost as a nice Sprinter, and we were just hobbling along with all these just idiots with us, and we're sleeping on the floor of the venues because it was so hot on the bus nobody could sleep, and no one had any money. All of us were broke. We didn't have any money, and we had no Soulfly wouldn't give us catering, so we had no food. They wouldn't even give me a cup of coffee.
Wow.
So, and our per diem was something like, I don't know, like 5 pounds or 10 pounds a day.
You were opening on that, right?
Opening on that, yeah. So everybody had 10 pounds a day, which was enough for people to eat like fast food twice.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely miserable, and we ended up getting ourselves kicked off that tour on purpose by just going on stage and making noise and not playing any songs.
Wow.
For just like, because they like, the band like wouldn't like Soulfly wouldn't really talk to us very much, and wouldn't.
That's so weird.
It was so weird because I mean they're.
And then within a short space of time, that must have just flipped.
Yeah, it flipped. Like, all of a sudden, we had, a lot of success, but that was one of the last tours before we did a bunch of tours before success happened, and that was just miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah, just absolutely miserable. I mean, don't get me wrong, we didn't pay our dues for very long. It was a quick, like, year and a half, maybe 3 years before things, like, really hit big, but... Yeah, there was some interesting times.
Yeah.
In those 3 years. And I've been in the band longer now since I originally was.
Yeah, because when did you leave?
2001. So it was like 96 to 2001. And then I've been back since 2009.
Yeah.
So.
It's funny. Like, that whole period was nuts. I remember, like, biggest band on the planet at that point.
Yeah, for a little while.
Like, Chocolate Starfish was like a million plus records in the first week.
1.7 million in the first week, which is still like, which now you can, I mean that nobody can do that. Nobody will ever do that again.
That was a good point for music at that point.
It was the last point for music. Now it's just like. It's so weird. There's a band this 3-girl band that just appeared out of nowhere that has all this major label backing and all these rave reviews from all the hipster websites, and they've just sold out a tour, and Carré and I just heard of them last night. I can't even remember what the name is, but they're everywhere all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And they've got 3,000 followers on social media. And we're like, what the hell? And super glossy produced... high level, like multiple videos. They only have 3 songs out. They haven't even put a record out yet. And we're just like, it's like the new Payola or something, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean that kind of happened back then as well, I guess. But it was just.
Oh yeah, Bizkit we got our label got busted for doing Payola for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a big thing where, we were like they were paying radio stations or like MTV or something. Like Biscuit totally got the label got busted for payola.
Wow,
It was a big article back then.
that's nuts. I just remember that whole thing. Just kind of watching it slightly from the outside and just thinking how mind blowing it was. And I like that band a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably way more than
Probably more than I do. Yeah.
But
No, I like it.
I always thought our paths
like it
would have
enough to
crossed
be a
earlier.
part of it.
Yeah, I always thought our paths would have crossed though. I mean, we played one show with you.
Which one?
It was Finsbury Park. Biffy Clyro opened.
Mm-hmm.
And it was us, and then you guys.
What year was that?
I don't know, like 2000, 2001, 2000?
Oh, that's when I was super over it.
Yeah.
That's when I was...
Because I remember that, because I didn't see you for the whole thing, so yeah, that would probably explain that.
Yeah, I just would stay. I would just like not show up and just show up right when I had to and then do makeup and go on
For
stage.
somebody that was over it, used to put, well, and, you were never that guy. You were never that guy that would just walk on in the clothes that.
No,
that
I still put tons of.
in.
I mean, I've always put tons of effort into it, even when I was over it. But I wasn't over being a musician or trying to, do some sort of art in some way. I was over being famous. I didn't like being I didn't like being famous because it, like, I never really wanted to be on that level, and I also didn't want to have. I think it took me a long time, and I'm still have trouble with it now, having other people interpret what you're doing when you put something out into the world to. I don't mind reviews or criticisms. I mean, they're not bad reviews and people being critical or dismissing you is just, comes with the territory. But when people like what you're doing, but they like it for some reason that you didn't intend, and it comes back and people interpret what their view of your work is, and it's not what you intended. That's what when a lot of that started happening, I was just like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like.
What, because of the type of crowd that it attracted? And
more like I don't mind who my fans are. It's more of like it just depends on what they're interpreting it as. Like if I'll take like makeup for example. It's like when I've and when I've tried to, like, in the past go, oh, I'm doing this makeup because I really like this opera that I saw, and like this is the theatrical makeup from this opera. But when that translate comes across, people are like, oh, the makeup, that reminds me of like that dude I like from the WWF wrestling, so they go, that's their only point of reference. So they're like, you're trying to do this, and it comes back, and all of a sudden people are like, I really like that guy because he likes wrestling. So they've taken like what you've done and turned it around, and it comes back to you, and have these assumptions about you as a person because of their biases and their reference. And I think even though that's just the way of the world, and that's fine, and that shouldn't bother anyone. For me, it was just sort of like, I thought going into it, oh, I'm gonna, reference all these things I'm doing, and like put up a flag, and people are like, oh, I like that too. But then you realize that what you're doing is what I was doing was like such a tiny slice of awareness would be like, it's such a small amount of awareness that it's just, how do I say this? I think I've already said it.
Yeah, but I think, I totally understand what you're saying. But then if we were to go back to the whole thing about what a shitty time high school was for most people, the one thing amongst all that, the saving the saving grace in that world was that you would find 5 people maybe
Yeah.
that were totally on the same track as you.
Mm-hmm.
So then in the same way, you could look at it that the tiny sliver of people
Yeah.
that were getting it, you know, you find you could. I don't know what I'm saying. I think that, you know, I applaud it, and I think it was always such a strong element to the band as well, you know, visually, and I never once looked at it personally and went, it makes me laugh now you've said about it. I'm going to start thinking about it in that sense, about, oh wow, he must really like wrestling. But,
but I mean,
it seemed way beyond that for me. But I guess whatever.
well, I think probably because you got a larger amount of reference to pull from.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, but
did you? It's interesting you say about that, because when I interviewed Jazz Coleman from Killing Joke, and also when I spoke to Maynard from Tool recently, I said,
what's he like now? What's that like?
Maynard?
Yeah.
He was very shy. And I felt like he was weighing me up for the first 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Is that the first time you've spoken to him?
I'd actually spoken to him once before when I was a kid, which I didn't even say to him about, because it's one of those things where, you know, people are like, never meet your idols.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where I met him.
Oh, yeah, he's a bad one to meet.
I met him after a show, and he cut me down so bad that I actually laugh about it now, still thinking about it, because it was like, yeah, I'd probably have done that too if I was in that position. Like, it was harsh but funny.
Yeah.
But I didn't even mention it because it would have been really awkward. But yeah, he was great. But I spoke to him about the whole thing about when he, you know, he'd come out and wear a lot of face paint, and would do like kabuki faces and have like a bra with like fake tits and stuff. And then when I was speaking to Jazz Coleman as well, he was saying, you know, he puts on makeup, and in it he would use it as a... See, in my head, I see it that it's like a form of armor in a way, that you can act in a certain way and not feel as self-conscious about certain things, and you can go further and push things in a more artistic direction because you're this other person, this character. And then both of them, well, obviously it was Jazz Coleman first. I sort of said, you know, that he's very well known for almost channeling this other person that he is when he's on stage and when he's performing. And I said that to Maynard, and he said it's exactly the same thing. That is a way of putting something on and then getting out of the way and letting things move through you. How do you view it? Discuss.
I mean, it's like, I normally wouldn't drink pee in a bottle and drink my own urine,
and do you think?
But I wouldn't like that's one of the more, you know, that or I wouldn't normally run around trying to unplug the lighting rig at a show just because, or throwing smoke machines off stage, or, you know, I was zip tying people's shoes, crew members' shoes, to like the scaffolding around the stage, like at one point. Like that whole thing, as far as like acting like a complete idiot / asshole, or, you know, not taking your own safety into account, or throwing guitars through the air, or tackling people, or, you know, jumping on top of my guitar rig and riding it to the ground and possibly destroying large amounts of costly equipment. Like, none of that stuff in the moment is anything I would do in normal life. And I think being in a character channels that sort of like, whether I'm taking something out on everything, or I'm just like suspending, suspending all sort of normal parameters that I would function within to not be arrested in my everyday life.
Yeah.
Like I think that it's just like a free for all for me sometimes.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that's okay, and I don't feel like I don't feel good about it afterwards.
Is that
But
after once you've then removed all your makeup?
yeah,
Well, there you go. That's really interesting.
like I don't feel good about what I've done on stage, but it's all part of what makes the show a show,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
And for me, it's it's cathartic in some way,
Yeah.
and I don't really. If I never was able to do it again right now, that would be fine because I've done it enough, and I don't. I'm not really as angry of a person. I think as people get older, the anger just turns into tiredness. like like I'm not angry at the world anymore. I'm just tired of it.
Yeah.
To where I'm just like,
That's so true.
where I'm just like, no thanks.
Yeah. That's
Yeah, there's nothing, there's no way we're gonna win the fight. We might as well just
keep on.
just ignore it.
Yeah. Do you? That's brilliant. So, this thing about because you've had really, you would have certain themes for different eras,
Yeah.
and I guess that's just a case of being
Current interests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
or like this would be a good idea, or this would be a good idea,
Yeah.
or I did that on last tour, and that was a real pain to deal with, like electronics or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have no electronics on this tour because I want to do, I want to move more, have more movement or something.
Yeah, I find the weird. I don't know how you view it, but from an outside perspective, like this weird, I see him as like a 1950s tourist that's
Yeah.
gone somewhere exotic.
Mm-hmm.
That guy
Mm-hmm.
that was fairly recent.
Yeah.
It was really quite disturbing as far as like that was the most visually disturbing thing I think out of all your.
Really?
Yeah.
That was the most disturbing?
I don't know why, because it's really comedic, but in such a dark way, and it also, I don't know what it is. It just makes me think of all these horrible things from like
Yeah, me too.
this kind of mindset of people from that era, how they were almost like monsters. Do you know, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I've actually found that it's been it was the most where the most stuff happened, where I felt like
See,
I could get away with the most with that.
That's interesting, because this is what I was going to then ask. I was going to say that with each of these different personas, if we're looking at them that way,
Mm-hmm.
which one was the most powerful in bringing through those kind of that would just kind of push the parameters of what was socially acceptable?
That one has pushed the most parameters as far as
That's interesting.
being able to be just absolutely obnoxious in so many ways, and that is also one of the ones where I actually felt it was okay to speak more during the show, where I could speak and talk through the microphone and address the crowd and stuff like that. But a lot of the other ones that are sort of more animal-like, that are like look more like an ape or a wolf.
Yeah, the mandrill kind of vibe.
Yeah, or where I'm just like all black and shut down and have like hair on some part of me, or those are, I would not speak wearing that kind of stuff. I felt like I couldn't speak at all, and that I was just like my movements were a lot more sort of like I was just ready to tackle something,
Yeah.
to where you just feel like I kind of would feel like one of those like demon dogs in Ghostbusters that are just like running around.
Zool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Zool outfits. So Yeah, and a lot of that was, there was a lot more going off stage with those, like going out and running. Like I actually went into the crowd a lot and would just like push people around in the crowd or run through the barricade or run up, like the more like ninja tactics with that kind of stuff. But the tourist is
How
has
do you,
been
like what's the inspiration? Do you have a name for him?
the tourist.
Yeah, is that because
That's
that's how
probably
I?
just, most people just call it the tourist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
okay,
just like
that's weird because that's
tourist,
just
yeah.
how I. Yeah.
And I just started calling it the tourist, just being
I wasn't aware of that. That's
a
weird.
tourist, because I'm kind of a tourist in that whole genre of music anyway.
Yeah.
It's like not. I've always felt like it's kind of not my world,
Yeah.
and I'm just
I think that's why.
kind of a tourist there.
Yeah, but then I think that's one of the strengths of that band is that you look at it that way, because it shows, because it's not. See, I know that you probably have a problem with certain aspects of that band and the way it's viewed as being almost meatheadish, but I don't think it is, because I think of what you're doing within it totally adds a whole other dimension to it.
Well, a lot of people.
That might be just
a lot
I
of
sit
people
around
just,
and think about it too much.
What, I think, I mean, I think a lot of people who are into Biscuit, I'm just a clown, or a jester or something.
I don't see it like that, but you saying that is funny, because then that goes back to the Jazz Coleman thing, because that's how he views that person that he becomes. He calls it the Black Jester, and then we started speaking about like Jungian archetypes and then tarot and stuff, and we got way into it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because even if people do view it as that way, that's not necessarily a bad thing that they're viewing it as that, because they just don't understand what that archetype is, maybe. If we're going to really sit and like...
Yeah, like really get into it.
Yeah.
I've given up trying to put much weight in what people's view of it is.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you shouldn't anyway.
Yeah. I think that I cared about it for a long time, and I want to make it clear that at this point I don't care about it anymore. I mean,
but that's liberating, right?
Yeah, it is. But I think that I've always said things that I've always talked to like our like fans and stuff like that, like I would talk to anyone, and people have given me a hard time, like especially recently, that like I think some people appreciate me like speaking to people online whenever I like am responding to people online, or even in public, like when I speak to people face to face. I don't really go into like oh, hi, nice to meet you mode anymore. I talk to people like I would anyone, because I think they deserve that, and a lot of people don't like that, because they want me to be there's, how do I say this? There's a certain way that some artists talk to their fans that's very disingenuous, and they're playing the role that they think their fans would want them to be.
Of course.
Like, and they're just like so grateful and so thankful and so, PC about everything.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel that way. I think that people deserve to be treated like people.
Yeah, honestly.
And if I disagree with someone, I'm just because you were interested in my album and bought my album doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with you in order to, I'm not a politician. I'm not looking for a vote. I'm looking to express myself. I recently asked that Trump supporters unfollow me on social media.
Yeah.
And I got a huge backlash from that.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, even people who weren't Trump supporters thought that was a really shitty thing of me to do. And I don't feel that way. I wouldn't have. I'm not in the least bit regretful about saying that, because I think that it's one thing to, have a difference of opinion on music or film or something, or an idea that's not, is not as dangerous as, I think Trump is so dangerous, and that the U.S. and the UK in many ways, so for some reason, all of a sudden, all the racists came out, and all these people who were secretly racist and secretly bigots there are public figures now who are openly saying things that reflect how I feel.
So I've got a free pass.
So I've got a free pass to let it loose. And these people need to know that that's not okay, and that I don't care who you are, if you've been a supporter of me or not. I'm absolutely, the only thing I can do to make a statement, and I'm not a politician. I vote, and that's all. I mean, I'm a citizen, and I'm going to use any platform I have to fiercely state how I feel.
Yeah.
And I will always do that. And in this case, I feel like it's a dangerous enough time to where that needs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think the situation there and here, as we've just had, I remember going to sleep, as after all the votes had gone in on the referendum, and I woke up in the morning and my wife was like, "Yep, they won," and I was like, "Yeah, right." She was like, "No, really, they won," and it blew my mind, and I see what's happening in the US as well, and it just seems to be that there is this kind of overriding sort of feeling that's happening.
It's
at the
like
moment.
terrorism won.
Yeah,
they won. They got everyone to be afraid enough to where they've got, everyone's just in an uproar of like, stop the bleeding. We have to stop. We have to stop this. It's like a new segregation or a new.
But that's bizarre, because that's been going on. Like you say, growing up in the 80s or whatever.
Yeah.
It's we're roughly the same age, right?
I'm 41.
Yeah.
How old are you?
43.
I thought you were younger than me.
No.
Well, you look great.
Thanks. But it's like that whole period of, I remember, as I said in other podcasts, when this whole thing generally comes around, is like, being at school when the imminent nuclear threat, the nuclear threat was in existence, and at any point we could all be vaporized. So that fear.
But that was always a country. That was something you could point a finger at and say, that country over there, behind their walls, across that sea, is our enemy, and they're dangerous.
Yeah, but that's the same thing now. It's just dressed
up
everywhere in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
That whole charade of people being played and having their own fear used against them in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are people not just going, this is all bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Like, we understand that these terrible things are happening in the world. They've always been happening.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have to listen to some dude that used to be on The Apprentice or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy, because when that first
when
he first started running,
crazy. No one thought.
Well, no, it was a joke, and then it was just a gift to comedians.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's gone so beyond that. In the middle of the art, like not the art, because it still seems to be rising somewhat. In the middle of his rise, that was when all the whole kind of like conspiracy theories about him actually working with the Clintons, and it was just so that everyone was like, whoa, this guy's a shithead. This is our only other option. And when that first got sort of put out there, I was like, yeah, it makes total sense. Maybe that's what this is.
Yeah, because
And
it seems
now,
like everything he's done, it seems like it's a move where they're like, oh, we're definitely going to lose now if I do this.
Yeah. But
like, I'll do the worst thing I possibly can. And still.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
That now, that it's just continued this rise to the point where now it's crazy. It blows my mind. But I'm hoping that it's going to get to the point where it's so bad that is the only option to vote elsewhere.
I think we passed that point.
You think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he could do anything. He couldn't do anything else. Nothing he could do would change his supporters' minds.
That's terrifying.
If he were to be walking naked through the streets, barking at cars, I don't think it would affect people voting for him.
Yeah. I'd pay to see that, though.
I wouldn't. I'm done. Remember, the anger has turned into tiredness.
Yeah. Bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, you're here for like you just said to me before we started that you did Why Not and Lee Fest with
Why Not
Queen
Lee
Kwong.
Fest with Queen Kwong. Yeah, we've got one more. We've got a festival in Lithuania that us and the Pearl Hearts. Or do you know who the Pearl Hearts are?
No.
Two girl band that they're really good. We've been playing with them a lot lately. But yeah, we're all going over to Lithuania to play this festival that actually might be in Latvia. We're not exactly sure, and we're not even sure what the back line is there. So We're just going over with fingers crossed. Yeah, we're doing that, and then I fly after that show. I drive like 3 or 4 hours to Vilnius, to the airport, and fly through Kiev to Zurich and start 3.5 weeks of Bizkit shows.
Okay.
And then back over to U.S. We're going to finish the new Queen Kwong record.
So how's that shaping up?
She's at 11 songs. Some of them I'm involved with. Mm-hmm. The other are things that she's been working on with Joe Cardamone from Chris Lanigan.
Are you going to mix it again?
I think so. It's looking like the idea is, since Get a Witness was very sort of like improv and raw. Yeah. What we're doing is we're taking basically what would be finished tracks on Get a Witness, and then we're playing them live.
Yeah.
And then we're going to re-record them with the band with better mics and better production, so that the songs will have gone through 3 stages. They'll have gone through the initial demo stage, then a live performance stage, so that because things are interpreted different once you start playing them live.
Yeah, of course.
So they'll have gone through that, and then all the best bits from those moves through the song, those 2 generations of the song, will be put together and be the album. So that we'll have an 11-track record that's more streamlined, but still contains all of the raw energy of the live show, which I don't think we had on the last one.
No.
And also all of the studio sort of, spurt of the moment magic. Yeah. So we have all of it in one album. It's exciting too, because I'm more involved in the writing. Yeah. On this go through on at least 4 of the tracks, and then sort of interpreting a lot of stuff that from the her and Joe songs live. So it's always just more exciting to be more part of it, but it's still like her vision and taking the songs that she's writing, because they're all based on her playing bass parts or vocals or stuff like that, and just making them come to fruition.
Yeah, because I assumed that after all that run of shows that you did, where the band was firmed up with like Hayden.
Yeah, Hayden and Fred.
And
yeah.
Fred, that was going to be the lineup, and then you'd work on a record as a band. But I get it that it's not going to be that way.
Well, our move to Detroit really put a large distance between Hayden and Fred and the two of us, and we were writing and wanted to try songs out live, and we couldn't fly them over all the time. And plus, Hayden's playing in the New Regime.
Yeah.
Alon Rubin's band, who's been like opening for Muse, and now they're doing the Cult, and they're just going from like tour to tour, so they're constantly busy. So we've had to have a new rhythm section. We've actually been working with multiple rhythm sections, multiple drummers. We've played with 3 drummers now live since Hayden. And the guy we have over here is this guy called Ben Luckett, who's from Detroit. And then this girl, Cheryl, who plays in the Go Team, a group called the Go Team here. And she's...
And how is it now playing those songs? How do they differ from when you were touring with the other guys?
It's taken a while to get tight with the new players, but it's getting tighter every show we play, and a lot of people like it more.
And are there different aspects of things that are coming out? And because obviously people's playings are different.
Yeah, I mean, there's different things that are happening. They Ben, the drummer now, really studied Hayden, on video closely, and wanted to really capture a lot of the stuff that Hayden was doing. And Cheryl is so good on bass that she's just, she learned all the parts. And her and Carré were having, FaceTime rehearsals where she was learning all the stuff because she lives in London. But it's been really good. Yeah. It's they're I really like this lineup. And
I'd like to see it.
Well, we should have probably played this week since we've got 3 days off, but we played London so much last year that she just wanted to take a year.
I think that's a smart thing to do.
We played London 7 times last year. Yeah. So take a little break.
Yeah, wait until there's something new.
Yep. Yeah. And there will be, hopefully, I think we're going to be done in September. Yeah. And then it'll be probably a spring release.
Then get married.
We're getting married in October.
Yep.
And we're going to go on a honeymoon to Tokyo.
Nice.
Check that out. And then we might be doing another TV show.
Oh, yeah? So tell me about this other one first, because I remember when you were over and you were looking at houses, and the one that you were looking at fell through, right? We were it was going to take about $1 million to fix that house. Like there were structural problems and so many issues. And this house, I forgot what we talked about the last time we were chatting, but to summarize quickly the recent history of this whole thing, Carré and I were really sick of LA and we wanted to get out of it. Yeah. LA's like London traffic with no public transportation. So it's way more spread out, and it's awful. And we were just tired of it and wanted to move somewhere else. And we were looking at everywhere from London to New York to Hudson Valley above New York to Portland, Oregon. But we wanted to get away from the West Coast and get more East Coast. New Orleans. We were looking at all these different cities, and Detroit ended up being the one that seemed the most interesting because the city is kind of having a renaissance right now, and there's great people there, and great restaurants, and a lot of ideas, and people are trying to, reimagine what the city is going to be, what the industry is going to be there. So it's sort of like a rebirth in some ways, while maintaining the city as it is and maintaining the history of it. I think that there's so many different elements there that make it a great city already, but also a city that has like super large amounts of potential, and everywhere else just didn't seem as visceral as Detroit did. And we went there and spent some time there and looked at some houses and
really felt that that's where we wanted to be. And it's also a really well located place because the flight over here is quick. From there, the airport's great. It's an international airport, and you can go anywhere direct, or just with like one stopover somewhere else. And it's you can get to Chicago, Toronto, Columbus. You can get so many. There's so many big cities. Pittsburgh is close.
Yeah.
It's really centrally located. So that's where we started looking, and we the house that we looked at a few houses there while we were selling our house in LA, and the house that we originally wanted to get, we were the second offer in, and it was a house that was already remodeled, and it was amazing, and it already had an offer in before we put ours in, and we lost it. So then Carré at the time was really, it sort of had a what do you call a guilty pleasure of watching DIY and HGTV renovation shows.
Yeah.
And I started watching with her these shows and kind of getting into it. And she was like, "You know what we should do?"
Obviously, that's what you say.
She goes, "You know what we should do? We should get a house that needs to be fixed up in Detroit and just get one of these shows, and that way we can knock it out like that." She's like, "It'll force us to." Like, we get a show. It'll force us to like do everything up front.
Yeah.
And that way we don't have to get a house that's already renovated. And she was like, "I'm looking at houses right now. There's all these houses that need work there. We could just like camp out in a tent in the house while we work on it." And I was thinking like, that's such a bad idea.
Have you seen the Money Pit?
Yeah. That's what. Yeah. I actually have pulled. While we were working on the house, I pulled the trailer for the Money Pit up and showed it to her and I started tearing up because we were like living it. So anyway, and this house has been a definite money pit. So we were just like, okay, we'll call up a couple of agents and see if they can get us meetings with the production companies. And in one day we had the production company, and a few weeks later we had the show.
That's so weird.
So weird.
Amazing.
And we were like, okay, I guess we're moving to Detroit. We start shooting. We bought a house that was a mess.
Yeah.
And it got approved. The first house, we bought a house that was a real big mess, and abandoned it because it was going to cost $1 million to fix it up. It had like, the bricks were coming apart on this. There were a bunch of structural problems. But so anyway, to make a short story longer, we shot this show last year, and it started airing like, I don't know, a month ago.
Yeah.
And it was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, rated show that the DIY network has ever had.
Are you kidding?
No. So they want us to do another one.
Amazing.
So
wow.
So so they're beating down our door now to do another one.
And how's that gonna work? Like, your house is done though, right?
Yeah, so what it would be
you come do mine.
If you move to Detroit,
yeah,
maybe we will. The idea is to get a house and do the work on it and donate it to charity.
Oh, amazing.
In Detroit. So that would be season 2.
How bizarre.
So, yeah, I mean...
I haven't seen it. How was it? How was it being filmed on everything? Because you're quite an introverted person.
They just... I don't know. I wasn't introverted when we were working on our house, but...
Yeah, but how did you feel about it? Was it fun?
It was really challenging to like work because we were doing like 12-hour days, you know, and having to wake up at the crack of dawn, you know, to shoot this thing. And we did it for 12 weeks.
I really want to see it.
So it was a grueling schedule, like, you know, and having to deal with a lot of issues and, you know, I mean, we're still working on the house now. The show just knocked out like a lot of it.
Yeah.
But this house is a money pit, man. It's like just now is the money starting to stop draining. But I mean, it drained my savings. It's
But
been
I
a
remember
lot.
when we were talking, you were talking about putting a studio in the basement, and
Yeah, and
is that
that turned
happening?
out great. No, the
Oh, it's
studio's
done?
done. Yeah,
Oh,
that
awesome.
I did. We remodeled the basement, put in the studio. As soon as the show pulled out of the house, I started cabling and doing because we only had time to like place all the boards and the desk and the computers and like do a quick like wire it up quickly just so it was barely functional,
Yeah.
and when they left, that's when I brought like because they were like, don't bring too much gear in because I have just shitloads of gear. They were
Yeah.
like, okay, stop. Because I was bringing stuff in. I was like bringing all the amps and guitars and drums and boards and everything. And they were like, it's going to be too cluttered. We should just shoot it like,
Yeah.
don't bring wait till bring all the rest of your stuff in until after we're done. So that's when the show pulled out. That's when I started bringing everything else in. Actually, all these houses have in the basement. A lot of them were built during Prohibition, so they have a ballroom and a billiard room, and then they'll have like a cabinet that opens and that the back pushes out of the cabinet for them to store liquor behind.
Amazing.
So we took the ballroom and made it the live room, and the billiard room and made it the control room. And because they're just big, they're terrazzo floors and really harsh angles, and none of them were meant to be, studio spaces.
Yeah.
So, man, paneling, like acoustic panels, like just I just kept putting them in, putting them in, putting them in, putting them in, and you could still like clap, and it would go pow, and be like super, super, all like the huge reverb and like all kinds of harsh slap between right angles and
Yeah.
or parallel walls, and yeah, we got it sounding really good.
Sounds
So
good now,
I
yeah.
did Crystal Machete. There was the first record I did,
Great.
and I started the minute the last thing was plugged in and recorded for 5 weeks, and then that was it.
Amazing.
But I hadn't like I say that I did Crystal Machete really quickly, but I hadn't recorded anything for a year and a half or written anything for a year and a half because during the whole moving and transition and shooting that show, when we weren't moving or packing or unpacking or shooting the show, we were on tour.
Yeah.
Because Bizkit and Queen Kwong both toured so much last year that
Yeah.
I was just going from tour to tour to tour to tour to tour. And so I didn't have a studio for a year and a half. So I had all these ideas, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't know what shape it was going to take necessarily, but I knew that I was going to make something that sounded like that record. So it was just like, boom.
Yeah.
And all the thought about writing was put,
Amazing.
brought into
To
reality.
have all that at your disposal now as well. I mean, that's got to be.
Oh yeah, it's so easy to work with space.
Yeah.
To have an actual, separate room, and to be able to, because in LA I had a storage space that I would in like maybe an eighth of the space
Yeah.
that I have to work with now. So it's been just killer.
Yeah. And are you writing other stuff? Is there going to be more stuff along the lines of like what?
Yeah, that's what I want to do now.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a sequel record to the next record as a solo artist. The Blacklight Burns thing I think has run its course. Like
Yeah?
I think so. I don't really find it. I find touring to be kind of, I don't know. As far as Blacklight Burns goes, I don't find that making those albums and touring is bringing a lot of enjoyment to me anymore, because I don't putting a band together, and like I'm already doing that in Queen Kwong, doing
exactly.
working on putting bands together and stuff like that, and Carré is really driven to do that, and I'm not really writing songs that are like heavy songs. It's not really what I get excited about anymore.
Yeah.
I want to write music that I would want to listen to.
Yeah.
I think. And
but do you think another band will be necessary at some point for those songs to have a home, or do you think that
oh, for the Crystal Machete stuff?
yeah, or other other things that you might be writing?
Because
I find that, when I'm writing, you're very much just working with what's appearing without getting too much into that side of it, and then you kind of try and find a home for them afterwards.
I mean, I've always written with a project in mind.
Okay.
I think I've always written, like, I really knew that all the stuff that I was writing it was all gonna be for this record.
Yeah.
And for Blacklight Burns, I knew that I was gonna be writing for Blacklight Burns. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, even that developed into something that I didn't really like anymore.
Yeah.
Sort of like it got to. I never like stuff after Crystal Machete is the first thing that I still like 6 months after.
I'll give it a year and a half.
Yeah, give it a year and a half. But at least we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah,
at least I'm headed in the right direction.
Yeah, which is interesting because I remember when last time I was in LA, I came out to the studio when you were doing the Bizkit record.
Yeah. And
I really I really liked the idea that Fred seemed to have for it, because it was like, I remember him saying, and it's similar to something you said yourself, like, people don't give a shit, so we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if we play shows, people are just going to want to hear the hits.
Yeah.
So then you're in this liberating space where you can do anything and it doesn't matter, because I remember him saying, well, people are going to give it a shitty review anyway, so we might as well just do whatever I want to do. And his idea about it being this, I don't know if I can talk about it. I don't know
go for it.
Yeah, like about it being almost like this sort of Paul's Boutique idea where things suddenly morph into other things, and it won't be regular song structures. And I was like, that sounds great, man.
I mean, that was the idea then, and I'm not sure what his idea is now exactly. I know we've worked on a lot of different, we've had a lot of different sessions for this record, and people our diehard fans really want it to come out, but the truth is that Fred's just not happy with what he's working on. He's not happy with it. So I know that he's been working on vocals for it on and off, and
because it was really interesting what I heard. I thought it was, it was pushing things for what that band does.
And some of that might be part of the record. That might still be what the record is. I don't know if more is going to be written or not. But in the same way, like, I'm much more the person where I've just been like, let's just do whatever and put it out. Like, I'm all about, like, capturing whatever is happening with me now. That's probably why I've looked back and not liked a lot of stuff that I've done, is because I'm looking back at, like, an old haircut I had or something. It's like the equivalent of going like, oh, what was I thinking? Yeah. But I'm much more of like, let's do it and get it out. Whereas he's much more like, he'll just keep working on something until he's happy with it. And even if it takes years, and at this point it has taken, years for him to get happy with it. And I'm just not sure he's, like, in the same way where it's like, well, nobody gives a fuck, let's just put it out. It's like, I think his mindset is, well, nobody gives a fuck, so I better like it if I'm going to put it out, for me. Yeah. So I think that we're, we don't see eye to eye in that way. But I definitely understand how he feels.
Yeah, I get that too. But at the same time, it's very easy to then fall into that trap where you're chasing your own tail and you can't see the wood for the trees, because
you're right. It definitely is. So
that's the creative process, though, isn't it? It's like anything. It's like if you're painting.
It's different for stop. At some point you have to stop. Then it's different for everyone. Everyone has their own. So I mean, who knows how much longer it'll be on that record? Maybe forever.
Are you still painting, by the way?
I stopped painting about 2 years ago, and then just recently started again. Yeah. With a brand new set of parameters that are similar to the Crystal Machete parameters. Yeah. As different as that record is from what I've done before, my paintings that I've just started now are the same difference from the paintings I've done in the past.
Okay.
So
And what are the points of reference or the the goals?
The goals are as simple as possible, as big as possible.
Great.
And the biggest canvases I can do with figured they're portraits.
Yeah.
You know, like mostly like full body portraits with unbusy backgrounds and a mix of actual reference and then out of my head as for the people. So
Okay.
I'm not working from. I'm working like from some reference, but not a ton of reference.
Okay.
And then they're just very bold, simple, huge paintings, and with not.
And have you started doing some then?
Yeah, I've started.
And how is it?
I haven't photographed any of them yet.
But how do you feel about it, working on that scale?
I like one so far. I'm working on 2 at a time.
Okay.
And I'm sketching.
Like you painted fairly large anyway, right? Because
yeah.
I struggle with scale as far as things like I found that I've gone down this route where it was something that I never really wanted to do, but now I'm actually happy where it's going, where everything was really tight and small and super figurative.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I
still
love
to
your
retain.
painting.
It's getting there.
It's really good.
Thank you. But I feel like I need to do what you've just described and get way bigger and.
Well, I'm doing nothing under 6 feet tall.
Wow.
So everything.
See, that blows my mind. I find looking at a tiny piece of paper to start work on daunting. I can't even imagine how it is standing in front of like a 6-foot canvas.
Well, I want to get even bigger than that and just have like almost all one figure. A couple might be 2 figures.
Yeah. But
they'll be very close together and fit into like the golden triangle.
Yeah.
Sort of, as far as how they're laid out. But I'm going to do, I think, 20 of these, and I'm going to have a show.
Yeah?
And I don't know where that show's going to be yet, but it's going to be a rebranding of... It's going to be the first time, I think, that I've actually taken painting seriously.
Yeah.
And then I'm going, like...
shave your head, hang out with Wayne Coyne, and take loads of drugs.
Yeah. That's the dream.
Well, that's great, though. And that to totally go at things in a different way, I'd be so daunted. But that sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing
must have some pictures.
Some pictures of the paintings?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I haven't taken any photos of them. I really don't.
Wow.
I won't photograph them.
I really want to see
I think
it.
Carré has a picture of one.
Yeah.
That she took without me knowing and sent it to one of our art dealer friends who went, yeah, give us more.
Great.
So... Yeah, but mostly what's been taken up...
Have you put a timeline on that, or are you just going to work until you're happy?
I think it's going to take me 2 years.
Yeah.
To get 20 done. So I think maybe spring of 2018, and I'm not going to put any online or show anyone anything.
Yeah. That's great.
Like I'm keeping it completely. I don't like talking about what I'm going to do. I really liked this, like, how I made Crystal Machete without telling anyone and just went, there's a record.
Yeah.
Because I really like that surprise kind of, like not showing the work in progress or not telling somebody what you're going to do, but just hitting them with a knockout punch,
Yeah.
Like, here you go.
Are you going to document it, though, whilst you're in the process of making these paintings?
I'll probably take some pictures.
Even if it's just for...
But no pictures have been one of the parameters. Like, I'm not allowed to photograph them because I don't want to be, like... I don't want to be tempted to put, when I'm bored at some point, to go like, oh, I'll just put that on Instagram.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
But that's really tough to do that because it's not like I'm in this, love me sort of need for affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
but it's almost as if I feel like I'm not working enough if I'm not.
Posting on social media
Which
or
sounds
something.
crazy.
No,
It's almost like it's not. It's almost as if it's a self-imposed means of making sure I do stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I
I
know.
feel like I'll
Yeah,
sit on my ass and do nothing.
I really want to. I know what you mean, but I'm really feeling like I need to. And Carré and I talked about this last night about renting a place for a month that doesn't have that just has a landline,
Yeah.
and giving people like the number, like a couple people a number in case of emergency, like if there's a death or
Yeah.
or if we have to be if our house is there's some sort of incident in our house, like a flood or in the basement or something. But finding a cabin in the woods that has a landline and leaving our phones
Hmm.
behind, and just
Like a detox
just
and a cleanse.
taking a month
Yeah.
and not having the ability to really speak to anyone, and just work on ideas.
Yeah.
Work on ideas to execute when we get back. Whether it's sketching, or we take like a little bit of equipment to record ideas, but just sort of like just sort of trying that out.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that we both have agreed that we want to do that at some point next year. So and also we need a break from this. Actually, coming over here is I've sort of had a break from. We got into rescuing cats in
Yeah, I
Detroit,
saw that.
like a big animal problem in Detroit, and we've actually kind of started an unofficial cat shelter out of our house, where we've been. People have been tipping us off to where there's like colonies of cats, and we've been going and trying to get them, like the mother and the kittens, and
Yeah.
then do like trap and release, because there's something like 650,000 wild animals in Detroit,
Wow.
and that's just sort of a guess. I mean, and it's
And what? And with the end being that they'll be rehoused and
with like if we can get
like
kittens,
getting cats spayed and neutered and
if you can get the kittens around 2 months or less, there's a chance that they can be turned into being domesticated and not just wild, feral, biting, scratching, hiding. Like,
imagine just you sat at home
I've been
trying to
bitten
eat
so many
cereal
times.
with just thousands of cats just biting you.
No, they're they're all in different rooms. Like all our guest rooms in our house all have like a different like group of cats living in them. And we got overwhelmed where we had 18 in our house and 4 at our neighbors across the street.
It's so commendable, but geez.
No, it's been exhausting, and we worry about them all the time. And now we have 3 feline leukemia positive cats, which is basically like AIDS for cats.
Feline AIDS, yeah.
Yeah, it's not feline. There's also FIV, which is feline AIDS, but feline leukemia is even more contagious, and it's like it's in the blood and can go down to the bone marrow, and they have 50% of them die within under a year. Whoa. So we've got those quarantined in a part of our house, and they're so sweet, and they're, they caught the disease from a shelter that we were working with. It's really a bad place, that doesn't have a lot of money and is totally overrun and overwhelmed. And it's an unwinnable battle, and we're not going to make a difference, but we're trying to make a tiny dent, in the problem. It's just, you get into this, like, you want to save them all,
of course.
But that's the other thing that we're working on in Detroit is we've just partnered with this guy, this developer named Ron, who's just bought a huge complex of like he bought a hospital and a factory and a power plant and a school. They're all in one huge complex, and bought several of the abandoned homes around this area.
Yeah.
And is working with the city to redevelop it all into like lofts and coffee shops and a skate park and
then fill the rest of it with cats.
Yeah, and one of his houses is going to be a cat shelter.
Wow.
It's going to be a cat rescue because there's not one proper in Detroit. You have to like go outside into the suburbs to go to them. But
that's crazy.
So we're going to build one with him.
Yeah, with such a big issue in the town.
Because you've got all these abandoned houses there that are perfect. The basements are perfect for cats to go in and just have loads of babies that start having babies with each other, and then you've got. One of the cats that we're keeping is this cat named Boba that we captured. He's got the little heavy metal throwing horns all the time because his mom and dad were probably brother and sister, and that that inbreeding thing happens and leads to birth defects. But man, we need help.
Yeah,
and we're getting it now. We're starting to network there and find people who are also. Really into saving animals.
How's the toxoplasmosis working out for you? You're just going to be...
Oh, I'm good. Yeah? I've definitely got toxoplasmosis, I'm sure.
Wow.
Carré's allergic to cats, and she keeps...
Are you kidding?
Doing it. No. She's
That's
like,
so
just
bizarre.
takes Zyrtec all day long, and,
No way.
Yeah, she's allergic. To some more than others.
That's a good point to finish on. Thank you for checking out episode 14 of Swim Podcast. Thank you to Wes. You can follow him online on various things. I think it's just at Wes Borland on most stuff. Just Google stuff, Also track down his album, which is out on Edison Sound Records, which is called Crystal Machete. It's brilliant. The next episode of Swim was going to be with Ben Weinman from the Dillinger Escape Plan, and we talk about their new album Dissociation and also Giraffe Tongue Orchestra. But as the second week of October is the 20th anniversary of the Marilyn Manson album Antichrist Superstar, I thought I would put out an interview that I did with Manson, I think at the start of this year when he was on tour and I was on tour with him, and we did this interview at like 4 a.m. and we spoke about Antichrist Superstar. And as he has a affinity to the number 15, it's an auspicious number in his world. Episode 15 of Swim will be Marilyn Manson. There's also an accompanying podcast that goes with that I did with Geordie as well, Twiggy Ramirez, which will be like, I guess, 15 and a half or 16. So that will come out around the same time. So that should be around the second week of October when the album's anniversary comes up. Again, please write a review. A nice one would be great. On iTunes, do some star ratings, preferably 5 would be fantastic. And look out for more. Spread the word.